I never thought I'd be the guy writing about this, but here I am. Life has a funny way of humbling you when you least expect it. I'm 57, divorced for a few years now, and I really thought I had sworn off marriage for good. That was until I met her. Emma. She was 28, stunning in a way that turned heads wherever she went. Not just beautiful, captivating. Full of life, energy, and this wild, intoxicating charm that made it impossible not to fall for her. We met at a coffee shop, of all places. I was sitting alone, scrolling through my phone, sipping on my usual black coffee, when she walked in like she owned the world. She wasn't just gorgeous, she had this presence, this effortless confidence that made people look twice. She flashed a smile at me while ordering her drink, and somehow, we ended up talking. One conversation turned into a dinner date, then another, and before I knew it, I was completely wrapped up in her. It had been years since I felt anything remotely close to this kind of excitement, this rush of adrenaline every time my phone buzzed with her name. By our third date, something inside me just snapped. Call it insanity, call it fate, but as we sat in a candlelit restaurant, laughing over our third bottle of wine, I did the unthinkable, I proposed. Right there, on the spot. Now, any sane person would have laughed in my face. We barely knew each other. It was reckless, irresponsible. But Emma, she didn't even hesitate. She gasped, her eyes wide with shock and something else, something that looked a lot like excitement. And then she said yes. I couldn't believe it. A 28-year-old knockout had just agreed to marry me, a guy nearly old enough to be her father. It felt like winning the lottery, like I had somehow cheated the system and ended up with the kind of woman men like me could only dream about. We didn't waste any time. A month later, we were standing in front of a courthouse judge, saying our vows. It was rushed, impulsive, and probably a terrible decision, but in that moment, it felt like the best thing I had ever done. For our honeymoon, I spared no expense. We jetted off to Aruba, a dream getaway. Crystal-clear waters, white sandy beaches, a resort straight out of a movie. I wanted to give her the world, and for those first few days, it felt like I had. We drank cocktails by the pool, took long walks on the beach, and spent every night tangled up in bed, completely lost in each other. It was perfect. Until it wasn't. Because that's the thing about fairy tales, they don't last forever. And mine came crashing down faster than I ever could have imagined. For the first few days in Aruba, everything was straight out of a fantasy. Mornings spent wrapped around each other, lazy afternoons by the pool, and nights filled with passion. I told myself I had done the right thing, that this wild, impulsive decision to marry Emma was the best thing that had ever happened to me. But then, little things started feeling off. At first, I chalked it up to exhaustion. The excitement, the travel, the long days in the sun. But Emma, she wasn't acting like a newlywed in paradise. She started pulling away. One night, we were having dinner at this beautiful oceanfront restaurant. Candlelight, live music, everything picture-perfect. But she barely touched her food. Instead, she kept glancing around the restaurant, distracted, like she was looking for someone. I joked about it, nudging her playfully. Waiting for your secret admirer? I laughed. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Just people watching, she said, twirling her wine glass. I let it go. I didn't want to be the insecure older husband who doubted his young, gorgeous wife. I had won the jackpot, and I needed to act like it. But that uneasy feeling stuck with me. Then there were the phone calls. Late at night, when she thought I was asleep, she'd step out onto our balcony and whisper into her phone. The first time, I barely noticed. The second time, I woke up just as she was sliding the balcony door shut. Who was that? I murmured, still half asleep. She flinched, like she hadn't expected me to hear. Oh, just my mom, she said quickly. She worries about me. At 3 in the morning. Something didn't feel right, but I told myself I was overthinking. I was too old for this kind of paranoia. She married me, after all. But the final straw came on the 4th night of our honeymoon. I woke up alone. The bed next to me was cold, the sheets barely disturbed. I glanced at the clock, 3:12 a.m. At first, I thought maybe she had gone to the bathroom, but the door was open, the light off. A weird feeling twisted in my stomach. I sat up, rubbing my face, trying to shake off the grogginess. Then I heard it, distant laughter. A man's voice. Low. It was coming from outside our room. I got up and walked to the door, my pulse picking up speed. As I stepped into the dimly lit hallway, the sound became clearer. Giggling. Whispering. The unmistakable flirtation of two people who shouldn't be flirting. I followed the sound, my bare feet silent against the cool tiles. And then I saw it. The emergency exit door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and stepped into the stairwell, just in time to see my wife pressed up against the wall, her hands tangled in some guy's shirt, his hands all over her. Her head was tilted back, eyes half closed, lips parted as he kissed down her neck. My wife. On our honeymoon. With another man. Something inside me snapped. What the hell is this? I roared. Emma gasped and shoved the guy away like he had suddenly caught fire. She turned to me, wide-eyed, scrambling for an explanation, but there was none. There was nothing she could say that would change what I had just seen. My perfect little fairy tale had just gone up in flames. Emma's face went pale as she frantically wiped her mouth like that would somehow erase what I had just seen. The guy, some tanned, smug-looking bastard in a half-unbuttoned dress shirt, just stood there, adjusting his collar, not even looking guilty. I took a step toward them, fists clenched at my sides, my body thrumming with rage. "Who the hell is this?" I growled, my voice barely recognizable even to myself. Emma stammered, eyes darting around like she was searching for an escape. It's not what it looks like," she sputtered. I barked out a laugh, bitter and humorless. "Oh really? Because it looks like my wife was just letting this asshole feel her up in a stairwell at 3 in the morning on our honeymoon." The guy finally spoke up, lifting his hands like he wasn't interested in a fight. "Hey man, I didn't know she was married, all right? That set me off." I turned to Emma, my voice dangerously low. "You didn't tell him you were married?" Her mouth opened and closed, her face twisting like she was scrambling for a way out of this mess. "I was going to," she whispered, like that made it any better. I took a deep breath, trying to stop myself from putting my fist through the wall, or his face. "Get out of here," I snapped at him. The guy hesitated, like he was about to say something else, but then he shrugged, smirked, and strolled past me like this was just another night for him. Emma and I were alone now. She reached for me, her perfectly manicured fingers brushing my arm. "Baby, please." I stepped back like her touch burned. "Don't. Just don't." Her eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't buying it. "Not anymore." "I swear, it didn't mean anything," she whispered. "It was stupid. I had too much to drink. I cut her off." "No. Stop. Just stop." I couldn't listen to her excuses. Not when I could still see her tangled up with him, her hands roaming over his body like she had forgotten I even existed. "You married me," I said, my voice raw. "You said vows. And you threw it away for that." Tears spilled over her cheeks. "I love you," she insisted. "Please, don't let this ruin us." I let out a hollow laugh. "You already did." She kept begging, swearing up and down that it was a mistake, that she would do anything, to fix this. But how the hell do you fix something like this? I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving her standing there in that damn stairwell, sobbing. Back in our hotel room, I slammed the door shut, locking it behind me. I didn't care where she slept. She could figure it out. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, my head spinning. How the hell had I ended up here? Just days ago, I thought I had won the lottery, that I had found something real. But all I had really done was set myself up to be the biggest fool on the planet. I didn't sleep that night. And by the time the sun rose over the ocean, I already knew what I had to do. The next morning, I didn't say a word to Emma. I packed a small bag, threw on a pair of sunglasses to hide the exhaustion in my eyes, and headed down to the beach. I needed space. I needed air. I needed to wrap my head around the fact that my wife, the woman I had risked everything for, had betrayed me before our marriage had even had a chance to start. I spent hours pacing the shoreline, watching the waves crash against the sand, my thoughts just as turbulent. People walked by, laughing, enjoying their vacations, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. At some point, I found myself at the swim-up bar, knocking back drinks just to dull the ache. Whiskey, rum, tequila, whatever the bartender put in front of me. It didn't erase the memory of what I had seen, but for a few blissful moments, it blurred the edges. Emma finally found me in the late afternoon. She approached hesitantly, dressed in a flowing sundress, her hair pulled back, looking every bit the beautiful, remorseful wife. If I didn't know better, I might have thought she was innocent. But I did know better. "Can we talk?" she asked softly, standing beside my bar stool. I didn't look at her. Just swirled the drink in my glass and let the silence stretch between us. She sighed, sitting on the stool next to me. "I know you're angry." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "That's an understatement." Her fingers twisted in her lap. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered. I finally turned to face her, my gaze cold. "You should have thought about that before you shoved your tongue down another man's throat on our honeymoon." She flinched. "I was drunk. It didn't mean anything." I slammed my glass down on the bar, making her jump. "Stop saying that." My voice was low, controlled, but filled with barely restrained fury. "You made a choice. You chose to betray me." Tears welled in her eyes. "I love you." I shook my head. "No, you don't." "Yes, I do," she insisted, reaching for my hand. I let her touch me this time, but only because I wanted her to hear what I was about to say. "You don't love me, Emma. You love what I can give you. The trips, the money, the comfort. But me, the actual person, you don't love me. Because if you did, you wouldn't have done what you did." Her grip tightened. "That's not true. I was stupid, I was reckless, but it wasn't about you. It was about me being insecure. I got scared. We moved so fast, and I pulled my hand away." "So you handled that by throwing yourself at another guy?" She let out a choked sob. "I know I messed up. But please, let me make it up to you. I'll do anything." I stared at her for a long moment. Anything. I could have made her grovel. I could have demanded she spend the rest of this trip proving herself, bending over backward to fix what she had broken. But deep down, I already knew the truth. There was no fixing this. Trust isn't something you can glue back together once it's shattered. And mine was gone. I exhaled sharply, standing up. "I need space," I said, tossing some cash on the bar. "I'm getting my own room for the rest of this trip." Her face crumpled. "Wait, no, please." But I was already walking away. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. And for the first time since I met her, I wasn't blinded by the fantasy. I saw her for what she really was. And I knew, without a doubt, that our marriage was already over. The next few days in Aruba were a blur of silent tension and forced smiles. I got my own room, as I had promised, and spent most of my time avoiding Emma. She, on the other hand, was desperate to fix things. She texted me constantly. "Can we talk? Please, just for a minute." She knocked on my door late at night, whispering my name. She tried to act normal whenever we crossed paths at the resort, laughing too loudly, wearing dresses she knew I liked, acting like we were still the couple who had arrived here in love just days ago. But it was all an act. She knew she had lost me. And I think, deep down, she knew there was no coming back from this. I spent my days floating between the beach, the bar, and my own thoughts. I watched other couples, real couples, who looked happy, who actually respected each other. It made me sick. I thought I had that. I thought Emma had loved me for me, not just for the vacations, the money, the lifestyle I provided. The worst part, I still loved her. I hated her for what she had done, but I loved her. And that was the cruelest part of it all. On our last night in Aruba, she showed up at my door again. This time, I let her in. She looked exhausted, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying. "Are we really over?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I sighed, rubbing my temples. "Emma." She shook her head, stepping closer. "Please. Just tell me. Are we done?" I wanted to lie to her. I wanted to tell her that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way back. That we could put this behind us. But I couldn't. I couldn't spend the rest of my life wondering if she would betray me again. So I told her the truth. "Yeah," I said, my voice hoarse. "We're done." She let out a broken sob, covering her face with her hands. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She had made her choice. Now she had to live with it. We flew back home the next morning in complete silence. She tried one last time at the airport, her hand brushing mine as we waited for our luggage. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I felt nothing. "You already did," I said simply. And with that, I walked away, leaving her standing there in the middle of the airport, watching me go. When we landed back home, it was like reality slapped me in the face. The honeymoon was over, literally and figuratively. Emma followed me out of the airport, her suitcase rolling behind her, her eyes desperate, searching my face for any sign of forgiveness. I didn't give her one. We didn't drive home together. I got in my car, she got in an Uber. No words, no goodbyes, just the heavy silence of two people who knew they were at the end of something that should have never started. I expected her to show up at my house, to try one last time to convince me we could fix things. And sure enough, the next morning, there she was, standing on my doorstep, her makeup-free face making her look younger, more fragile. "Just give me a chance to explain," she pleaded. I sighed, stepping aside to let her in. Maybe I was a sucker, or maybe I just wanted to hear what kind of excuse she had come up with now. She sat on the couch, twisting her fingers together. "I know I don't deserve another chance. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I swear to you, I love you. And I was scared. I panicked. Everything happened so fast, and I don't know why I did it. It wasn't about him. It was never about him. It was about me, about my own insecurities. But I do love you. I need you to believe that." I watched her, searching her face for any sign of the woman I had fallen for. But all I saw was a stranger. A stranger who had already proven what she was capable of. "You don't get to panic and cheat on your husband," I said, my voice steady. "You don't get to use insecurity as an excuse. You made a choice, Emma. And that choice cost you our marriage." She started crying again, but this time, it didn't move me. I had spent days agonizing over what to do, but standing there, looking at her now, I felt calm. It was over. I let her cry. Let her plead. Let her promise she would do anything to make it up to me. But then I said the words that ended it all for good. "I want a divorce." She dissolved into full-blown hysterics, but I was done. I wasn't going to let her gaslight me into staying, wasn't going to let her manipulate me into thinking this was just a mistake. Cheating isn't a mistake. It's a choice. And I was making my own choice now, to walk away. Emma moved out the next day. I hired a lawyer. 2 months later, our marriage was nothing more than a legally dissolved contract. I won't lie and say it didn't hurt. It did. For weeks, I kept replaying everything in my head, wondering if I had been too quick to end things, if I should have tried harder to make it work. But then I'd remember the stairwell. The way she had looked at him. The way she had touched him. And I knew I had done the right thing. Now, months later, I'm in a better place. I'm taking care of myself, focusing on work, even dipping my toes back into dating, slowly. I'm not in a rush to jump into anything serious again. Emma was a painful lesson, but a necessary one. If I could go back in time, I'd tell myself to slow down, to wait. Lust and love can feel the same in the moment, but time always reveals the truth. I won't make that mistake again. To anyone reading this, trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. And if someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. It's never too late to walk away. Never too late to start over. And honestly, I think my real happily ever after is still out there, waiting for me. This time, I'll be ready for it. Thank you for visited my YouTube channel. Your support, likes, and comments truly inspire me to create even more engaging content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You're a part of this amazing community, and I'm thrilled to share my stories with you. See you in the next video on YouTube.